Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises along with special guest Stephen Godfrey from Split Zone Duo today. He's going to join us for an hour to talk about all this stuff happening in college football. At the end, Bill Landis will be back and we'll talk about some Big Ten After Dark, some what you're watching, what you eating, what you're thinking. But we are starting, Stephen. First of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Hey, crazy stuff happened in college football. Isn't that a nice coincidence that you decided to be on the show today and then crazy stuff happened?
Isn't that odd? It's as if I could control that, I would probably, well, my career would be very different. But
yeah,
we just schedule very well.
Schedule well. I think it's, I mean, who would have thought that something crazy could happen in college football? So the reason that you are here, Stephen, you have a new narrative podcast out called Who Killed College Football? And it's a murder mystery. And my bet is that it's Kirby Smart in the driveway with a set of car keys,
but not a snowblower.
No, not a snowblower. What
set of car keys to a Dodge Challenger would be the joke that we would make down in Georgia. Yes, so
that's launched. Is it out?
The prologue is out as you are listening to this right now. The prologue is out. You can go check us out, wkcfb.com, or you can search Who Killed College Football on pretty much any podcasting platform. And then also, if you want to support the show, if you want to, and this is where I'm going to lean in and appeal directly to the Kings of the North conceit, the spiritual quest that you're on, the thing that you wave your sword about. Okay. If you feel perhaps, there it is. It's always scary when it gets pointed at me. If you feel perhaps the sport has become lopsided in any particular direction, if you feel it perhaps favors a certain cravenness, if you feel perhaps the moral compass has been, I don't know, smashed, this might be a podcast that not only are you interested in listening to, Mr. King of the North. Is it, what are we going to go with sire? How do I don't know how I stretch this bit out. But
Mr. King is okay.
Mr. King. Yeah. It sounds a little bit like a Tyler dealership in the Dakotas, but I'm okay with that if you are. If you are of that persuasion, my friend, then you would be, oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. There's a lot more props on this show than when I initially thought. Okay. If you are of that persuasion, support the independent journalism that is going to actually speak truth to power, because I don't know if you've noticed this, sir. All of the largest media outlets who cover the sport are actually contractually in bed with the sport. I explained this to a European last fall who was gobsmacked. And now this is a person who lives and dies with FIFA. I explained this. I was in England. I was talking to an Englishman, and I was explaining that, yes, so the media entity that covers the sport also profits the most from it and also determined its playoff structure, which includes a bias towards particular conferences and regions over others. And he was dumbfounded. A human being whose favorite sport is ruled by FIFA, who put the World Cup in Qatar. Just want to throw that out there. So if it feels weird to you and you listen to this show and you're like, God, college football's really gone astray, the whole world, when they find out, tends to agree with that sentiment.
Wow. I mean, there's putting the World Cup in Qatar, but then there's building a playoff bracket to get Ole Miss as the 5th seed from the SEC. Like, that's even worse than Qatar.
We haven't discussed this yet. There's a scenario. You know what I feel like? I feel like Benedict Arnold when I come on this show. Like, I'm sneaking into like, okay.
But we're welcoming you.
But here's the deal.
You're in a safe space. You're in a safe space.
I often agree with you. And I look at the banners behind you. I love K-State. I've turned it into a joke on Split Zone Duo that I'm an alumnus of K-State. It's just a bit. I love Iowa State. I'm trying to see what else you got there. Indiana. We'll talk about the SIG in a second.
Some cues.
Get the SIGs. There is a theory working in Southern media right now on how Tennessee. Now, this does not include what I'm about to say. Does not include Georgia and Bama, and this is good because I'm here for a long segment. I want to give you a headache early. So this is the report from down south. You ready, General? Georgia, Bama, Texas, a given in some shape or structure in the 12-team format. The campaign that is about to unfold in the coming weeks is that the inclusion of 3. I just did it like a German or an Englishman. I can't remember. 3 more SEC teams, which would be Missouri, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Do you know what those 3 schools have in common? They don't play each other because by by serendipity, the 2024 one-off schedule that was created by the SEC after Red River came in has all of these continued. Now, some of these schools are obviously playing each other, Georgia and Bama, Georgia and Texas. But the knockout round that you would need if you're a Big Ten fan or just a fan of the Big 12 or so K-State right over your shoulder. Great example. I don't think they're as good as Utah. I think they would probably be an at-large team contending, right? Let's say Utah wins the Big 12. What you are going to see, I'm doing like the old Johnny Carson bit. I'll write it in the envelope. We'll seal it up. We'll read it later. You're going to see a concerted effort for Missouri, Ole Miss, and Tennessee to all make the playoff.
So thank you for warning us.
We good?
If the SEC gets in 6, we march.
You should.
We march.
I think if any league gets in 6, the way it's structured, I think that's absolutely asinine.
I don't like 5. I don't like the brackets I see when the SEC has 5.
I don't think
me on edge.
I don't think any conference should ever pass 5. I know that we have, look, bit aside, we have 2 super conferences that are the most well-funded, the most privileged, however you want to structure this conversation, personnel, coaching, resources, whatever. To get past 5 would, I think, betray the smaller lie you're telling in the bigger project that, it's accessible to anyone. Because then what you're telling the ACC and what you're telling the Big 12 is that you are a qualifier league and nothing else. If you are a very good 10-2 team in one of those leagues, you have no shot at the postseason. And I don't think that's fair.
And the thing that's scary about this, and you mentioned it, is in a world where ESPN controls so much, at least previously, ESPN was aligned with the Big Ten. And if the power was with the SEC and with ESPN, they weren't together. They were on opposite sides of the equation, right? Because the ESPN and ABC were very interested in Big Ten things happening. But now that it's Fox is with, and NBC and CBS are with the Big Ten, and ESPN is aligned with the SEC, you have the 2 central traditional things that have controlled the sport aligned. And we have not seen what that looks like exactly in this world and the way that they can wield that power. And it's scary. It is scary.
I think we're starting to see it.
Push it.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it right now. I think for the first time, you're seeing tiny little comments made by Greg Sankey that find echo chambers in the press, which is not really a thing anymore, as you and I both painfully know. It gets very scary to me because, look, there's something that's been abandoned about the Florida State omission last year because of Florida State's situation this year, which really doesn't have any bearing on what happened in 23. But the idea that Greg Sankey can immediately adopt a bully pulpit across every ESPN platform, whereas Jim Phillips couldn't, there's something unnerving about that.
And the Big Ten is less reluctant to bully anyway. They also don't have the platform. So Fox is not going to provide the same platform, and the Big Ten's not going to demand the same platform. And I already ranted about this on Tuesday, Stephen, that the idea that LSU is ranked 14th and Texas A&M is ranked 24th, and show me anything right now that would tell you that LSU and Texas A&M have actually done anything this year that would deserve them being ranked ahead of Indiana or Illinois or Boston College or Nebraska. But you puff up this soft middle that it's not based on anything, right? Boston College went into Missouri. It's a road game for Boston College, plays with Missouri all game. Missouri has done nothing to show that it really is a legit playoff candidate, right? Texas A&M just struggled with Bowling Green all game. They lose to Notre Dame. Notre Dame loses to Northern Illinois. LSU, Indiana throttled UCLA more than LSU did, but it's already and I like polls because it tells us what people are thinking. And it's better to know what people are thinking than to have it hidden until the end of the year. And I'm already nervous of this tier that you're talking exactly about, that a perception is forming. And we have to try to puncture it now because it's going to grow on itself because they are fake good teams beating other fake good teams or beating bad teams and being fake good. And all of a sudden you're looking at the 9th, 10th, 11th teams in the playoffs. And it's like, well, Missouri's this and Tennessee's that. And it's like, are they? Are they? Tennessee beat a team that only beat Houston 16-12. And by the way, benched its quarterback in the middle of the game against Tennessee. And this is a great win for Tennessee. If that was a Big Ten game, people would be ripping both teams. Instead, it's like, oh, Tennessee, look at the magic they performed against Oklahoma. It already is making me nervous. So thank you for telling us about it.
Yeah, go ahead. We could sit on this forever, by the way. We could do this for like 3 hours.
Did you watch The Americans, that TV show, The Americans, with Kerry Russell?
I have a very specific connection to The Americans, which is that I am the son of an FBI agent, and I grew up where that show is set 4 years after it is set. So it is extremely personal. Like it is bizarre how personally connected. And my dad was an FBI agent. We were in the neighborhood next to Falls Church. Like, yeah, I love that show. I've seen it. I've seen every episode at least 3 times.
Okay. So you're that for us. You are our embed. Because it's like you've lived in the South for a while now, but you're down there, but you're reporting back to us. So they think you're one of them.
I'm reporting to, and I can hide my accent as we've discussed before, because I grew up in DC. I am reporting back to logic, and I'm reporting back to reason. And there is something that scares the profanity out of me about the cult of personality around Sankey. And the
none around Tony Petitti.
Well, yeah, no, but I mean, we might want to have a conversation. Look, you want to fly me up to Chicago, Big Ten? I can teach you how to build a mythos, but like, you got to actually do it yourself. What's my party line has always been the same thing, and it was that when I was a kid and I was living in the Northeast, the NFL is king, and when I said that I was a fan of a Southern franchise, they would say, "Why? That's stupid. You don't need to cheer for them." What I saw in my adult life was the reverse in the South. Someone would say, I would be in an LSU tailgate, and someone would say, "Hey, how about Boise this year?" And they would say, "I hate their blue turf. It's stupid. I hate all that. I just want to watch SEC football." I have a major issue. This is a side note and a side note of people who they would rather watch South Carolina play Missouri than any 2 other ranked teams playing each other that might be just from a different part of the country. My belief is that this is the greatest sport in America. It is the most definitive and the most reflective of what America is, for better or worse. But it is only as good as when all of America can be part of it. So if Washington's in the national title game, if the Big Ten wins the national championship one year, if the SEC runs 7 off and Alabama and LSU play each other in the title game, that's not good for business, regardless of what people say in Birmingham or New Orleans.
So we agree with that, but also we think the South can cram it. So, but you know what we mean, right? Yeah. So
believe me, I'm used to brusque rudeness from Northeasterners and not so much Midwesterners. You have a Northeastern. The story to me screams Eastern Pennsylvania. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's exactly right. No, I am brusque and rude. I am brusque and rude. You're more Northeast. You report to Logic, right? You said that's who you're reporting to. Yeah. Where does Logic live?
Not anywhere in particular. Oh, I don't buy that.
More up here. Logic lives where Logic lives. Kings of the North, where Logic lives. That's what we're doing here.
I'll do the bit. Yeah, I'll do the bit.
Yeah, you do the bit.
When do you just leave it in your heart? What do you send me like merch or something?
I know we have to get that. We have the merch. We're merch.
I'll wear it around. I'll wear it around down south. I don't care.
No, I appreciate it. Well, you're first on the list. Okay, so here, let's talk about Bama, Georgia, though. Before we get more into this narrative podcast, before we get more into the chaotic thing happening in college football right now, I think this is a battle for the soul of the South. Georgia versus Alabama this week. Everybody else is talking about it ad nauseum. We are talking about it a little bit. Kirby Smart has beaten Alabama once. Now, he happened to do it in the national title game when Bama was down to no receivers, but he beat Bama once. He beat Saban once.
He did.
But I do think this is a passing of the torch, and it reminds me a little bit potentially. And we have if it's going to get passed. Urban Meyer came in and took over the SEC first, and then very quickly that torch was passed to Nick Saban. Nick Saban actually ripped it out of Urban Meyer's hand, and Urban Meyer had to call for an ambulance. He ripped it out of his hand so hard. But there was a little window, but it's a great SEC program, but here comes another great SEC program, and they're taking over. I think there's some similarity here with Georgia and Alabama. The difference is the king is gone. So it's a matter of so that makes it possible for Georgia, because it's going to happen that Kirby never took it from Saban. He beat him once when Bama wasn't Bama. And it also beat them after Bama had already beaten them when people thought Georgia was unbeatable in the SEC championship game. Yes. But here we are. Bama has run the sport. Saban ran it, but he ran it through Bama. Has run the sport for nearly 2 decades. Are we passing it off to Georgia? If we are, it starts on Saturday with a Georgia victory. So and then I have a thing about that. If we are passing it off, I guess my first question to you is,
take notes. Yeah.
Do you think it will be passed? Do you think this game matters that much? Or is it just going to be like, hey, Georgia and Bama are both good for the next 10 years. They'll go back and forth.
I don't think it matters that much. I don't want to subscribe to the theory that they're going to be good for this interminable amount of time. I don't. I think these castles are always made out of sand. All right. Okay. So we can start there.
Saban's wasn't.
No, Saban's wasn't, but Saban walked away and created a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Okay. So the way I wrote about this in the Washington Post this week, and I thought the best way to describe this to a highly educated and highly uninformed audience about college football is let's just simplify concept. Saban defines the sport for the better part of 20 years. Old Alabama is Athens, is Georgia. The things, in my opinion, and this is not a popular opinion down here, is that Kirby Smart runs too much schematically. Personnel, fundraising, all of it immaculate. Maybe the best in the country. I think pound for pound, Ohio State and Georgia run the most flawless programs in terms of the way you create football winning product, like a factory. But schematically and philosophically on the field, they're old Alabama. They are pre-Lane Kiffin Alabama specifically, when the idea was to sort of put you in a slow cooker and kill you, over 6 hours with 275-pound linebackers, grind you up. We only play offense because we're legally required to. New Alabama is not in Tuscaloosa. It's actually in Austin, Texas, which is, Kirby, without a doubt, is the most successful Saban assistant. We know that. He's won 2 national titles. He beat Saban in the national title game. As you said, he broke that long-term streak that Saban had against his assistants. There's also that other flavor, right? Which is the reclamation project that Saban would always take on. So he has all of these fired head coaches from around the country. Bill O'Brien, Butch Jones, Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, right? And by the way, the list goes a lot longer.
Yeah.
Steve Sarkisian goes to Texas. And one of the things that is still confusing for me to say out loud is that Steve Sarkisian, of all people, was the calming force that Texas needed, or the organizing force that Texas needed. But it seems to be that way. So they do the exact same thing. I think maybe they're a 1B behind Ohio State and Georgia in terms of personnel, the apparatus, the machine, the funding, the structure, the facilities. Okay, they're right there after all this time of having all this money. But I wrote something in the Post. It was like, Texas used to be a country club built on assumptions. And so they've eliminated that sort of entitlement. You can go look up the famous Bo Davis speech online on YouTube, and I won't digress on that. You can just look it up. And he basically ripped the kids the first year, I would say rightfully so, for the entitlement that Texas had. That leaves us Alabama, right? So you have defense Alabama in Athens, you have offense Alabama in Austin, and they're both using Saban's blueprint for the most part. So what is Alabama? Alabama, we know, was scared to death of the advent of NIL because they cruised for 2 decades on the Saban discount. That's what it was called. That's what it's still called in recruiting circles, is the Saban discount. Meaning that, look, I'm the guy who wrote the Bagman piece in 2014. Everybody's cheating all the time. That's my party line. Okay. If you're good and relevant in college football, you're cheating right now. Okay. If Michigan gets caught cheating, we're all caught cheating. Okay. That's how the mighty fall. Alabama used to basically benefit from, again, I'm not saying they weren't also cheating, but they would go into a recruit's home in the latter half of Saban's career. Any position you play, kicker, long snapper, center, they've sent to the NFL in droves. Multiple first-round picks at every position, okay? Well, certain positions don't get picked in the first round, but you get my point. That made it obvious for any candidate's family to sign with that company, if you will. It was almost just like it's like a guarantee. We're going to fast track you to partner at a law firm. The NIL collectives at Alabama were allowed to be lazy. When they first started, they were very fractious, very reminiscent of old Alabama, pre-Alabama, or pre-Saban Alabama, where you had sort of these little cultural kind of tribalism fights about who was going to run things and what would the bear do, and like just a lot of sort of 1970s brain that went well into the 2000s. They had to adopt the new mentality very quickly. keeping Milroe was evidence that some of that is working. They were able to work out an NIL deal with him. The problem with contextualizing Saturday is this, Doug. Look, the man just left. If it was a cartoon, the little puff of smoke would still be there, right? Yep. It's hard to say if Alabama wins this game that what percentage of ownership the new coaching staff has in it. And that's not to discount a coach who I think is really, really good. I like everything about him. I just think that the identity of post-Saban Alabama, I don't think it can be written. It's today, September 25th. I don't think, it can't be written before October, the first year that Saban's gone. It just doesn't work that way, as you know. You can sort of coast, you can cruise in the wake of something. Larry Coker has a national championship at Miami.
Yeah. That could be the Mark Helfrich zone. The Mark Helfrich zone.
Yeah, exactly. That belongs to Butch Davis. Yes, Mark Helfrich is a great example. In fact, Helfrich actually might be the talking point here, Doug, because he sustained. Now, he was part of that staff, though, I guess, so maybe it's not a perfect comp, but he sustained for so long. But the problem, what killed Helfrich, in my opinion? Well, he doesn't have Chip's disposition. They never iterated past the blueprint. They simply just took the same menu and said, "Hey, we're gonna do it like the old guy." It's hard to show the wrinkle where Helfrich makes it his own program, and then eventually, I think his personality, unfortunately, it was too laconic and it bled down, and then Oregon kind of fell apart. I don't think that's going to happen in Tuscaloosa, but we don't know what this Alabama is yet. I do know this: they're very talented, and they kept the core intact. And Saban walked away from the sport, which is, by the way, how Who Killed College Football starts. He walks away from the sport. He goes directly to Washington, D.C., and he tells a bunch of lawmakers at they call it a round table where it's not officially a congressional hearing, but Ted Cruz puts it on and gives them these kind of layups to talk about basically that NIL's ruining the sport. Yeah, maybe NIL and the portal's ruining the sport, but I'm not going to say that exactly because I know the optics would be terrible if Nick Saban, said that kids shouldn't be paid because, by the way, I make a small fortune every year, and I own multiple Mercedes dealerships across the South, and, et cetera, and so on. But he gets away with saying it without saying it. He says, everything I believed in this sport 50 years ago is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. That's a decision he made that we could spend time on some other time. He made a moral move. He was not run out. This was not Paterno. This was not Bowden. There is no historical precedent for this. So to take this to Saturday, what I am saying is he walked away from a team that was a couple possessions away from possibly beating Michigan. If they didn't have center snap problems, they'd probably beat Michigan, right? And then they're in the national title game against Washington. Interesting. And against Kalen DeBoer. Interesting. This is not a bad football team at all. They are going to sort of run on the fumes of his personnel for at least a year. Now, you used to be able to say a year or 2 or 3 or hey, until these sophomores or seniors. Obviously, we know the volatility of the market now. But as far as 2024 is concerned, that's the reality for DeBoer. So, long answer is I can't tell you if a torch will be passed. I don't know if this is the week in which we look for that.
So let's maybe we're not deciding if it will be passed, but do you think, I guess shorter answer on this because it's the prelude to the next question. Do you think Nick Saban was a good steward while running college football for the last 2 decades? If you looked at him and said, that's the guy who does it best, we should try to emulate that. Was it aspirational? Was it motivational? Was it, yeah, I would want to model myself and my program after Nick Saban's Alabama? Did you believe that to be true or not true for the last 2 decades?
Was he a good example for success? Inarguably. Was he a good steward for the sport? No. Okay. Can you show me a successful? No, I don't. I think that was inapplicable to what he was trying to do.
That he wasn't necessarily trying to be a good steward for the sport. He was just trying to beat everybody, however he had to.
Let me say it nicely. He didn't care.
And I do think, though, whatever new rule came up, he would usually complain about it and then adapt to it.
Exactly.
I mean, until this one. So
he fostered,
but
he fostered the Bielema thing
too.
So here's a great North-South examination. Brett Bielema's doing the thing again this year at Illinois. And he was run out of Arkansas because he imported this Wisconsin sort of thing, which is actually sort of the original Iowa thing. And it doesn't work in Fayetteville. Fayetteville's a hard place to win. But he goes to Illinois, and at the time, I criticized the hire. I thought they should have gone with someone younger. I thought they should have gone with someone who's a little bit more dynamic and who could sort of wake Illinois up. But I was wrong, because now we're looking at the second upswing of the Brett Bielema Illinois era. Imagine if they pull it off this weekend. It'd be huge, right? How does something like that work up there? What is the north-south difference of that? An interesting wrinkle of this is that I think Bielema didn't understand the political waters that Saban created down south, because he ends up fighting Saban's fight for him back in the 2014-2016 range about pace of play. Nick Saban, oh my God, he complained about pace of play for years. And then he goes and he gets Lane Kiffin off of the slush pile, and they're running tempo in the semifinal in the Sugar Bowl, trying to against Ohio State, which I still think is the most important game of the modern era. What's the T-shirt from the 11 Warriors guys? It's like 85 yards through the heart of the South. Is that game, I think, saved college football from itself. The problem was the reality it created was only temporary, and that Alabama adjusted, obviously had the same dominant run. And then arguably the only two dominant programs that come in the playoff culture are, I think, one, a mirror of Alabama, which is Georgia, and a Xerox of Alabama, which was Clemson, who has since declined in value. So yes, to get back to the bigger point, I think a north-south balance is necessary. Saban didn't care about any of that. He didn't care at all.
But so here's the prelude. So that's the prelude, because here's my next question. But who would you rather have as the face of college football, Nick Saban or Kirby Smart?
I don't think Kirby Smart can be the face of college football.
But if they win, won't he be? If they're the dominant program, isn't he the face? If they win another national title and they're 3 out of 4, isn't he the face? Doesn't he take that from Saban? Because this is my point. I don't want that. I don't want what Georgia is right now to be that. And for everything Alabama
hang on. You don't want Kirby as a personality and a belief set, or do you not want, you nailed it. It needs to be a little more frayed in the back. You clearly aren't fishing enough. No. Frayed, like true. Not sideways. What? Like
this. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing it wrong.
Okay. All right. I swear to God. I'll get mine out. Mine's a Braves hat, though.
You'll get yours out. If you pull a sword out, we're in trouble.
No, I have a mesh Braves hat because I'm a legal resident of the American South. The Kirby Smart. Here's the beauty, which I don't think anyone's going to cop to anywhere, north, south, east, west, whatever. I think Saban wrote a sort of poison pill into this entire arc. I don't think Kirby Smart could ever become the face, regardless of how many he wins, because he'll operate under a shadow. Now, if you're looking for, in the year of our Lord 2025, next year, who's the face of the sport in the coaching sense, I still don't think, even if Georgia wins, it's Kirby Smart. I don't think he knows how to hold command of the NCAA, of the networks, of all of it, the way Saban did. I don't think it's possible. And by the way, we're talking about Saban as if he died or was jettisoned off to his home planet. He's on television 7 hours a week. He didn't go anywhere. He's just complaining more. So, no, I don't think he can be the face. The problem is this. We lost Saban and Harbaugh as dynamic personalities within weeks of each other. Harbaugh was threatening for years. Like, I disagreed with some of the stuff I've read recently in various reports about like how Harbaugh was run out of the sport by an overzealous NCAA. We're talking about some northern bias. The Michigan mindset is that, like, it's everything that like the Branch Davidian compound in Waco was. The idea that like, oh, the poor and Jim just wanted to coach ball. Like, no, Jim tried to get the Vikings job.
Michigan stuff. Yeah. You're famous for Michigan stuff.
I'm famous for calling a spade a spade. I'm famous for being honest.
Yeah.
So congratulations on finally winning a national title when you actually learned how to cheat. That's how you do it in the sport. Yeah. So the problem is this. Ryan Day, I don't have the negative opinion of Day that I think has become very in vogue. The problem is, I think if, let's just say Ohio State wins a national title this year, I don't know if Day has that sort of je ne sais quoi, and I don't think he aspires to.
Gravitas. No, I'm not sure.
We are increasingly encouraging a bunker mentality, analytical, anti-spotlight personality type to become head coach of these programs. I think the days of the statesman and the politician I don't know if they're over forever, but I think we're trending back towards the chalkboard guys.
But I would miss that. Because if you don't have somebody like that, you know what the face of the sport is? Chaos. You know what the face of the sport is?
The face of the sport is chaos right now. I mean, God.
But you need a counterbalance of like, look at this guy. He's like a senator. He's like a CEO. He runs a program. He wins. He's successful. If you don't have that counterbalance, while so much of the off-field stuff is on fire, I worry about the view. I think you need a couple people, right? You need people who are going to have statues one day. Yes. Leading the sport somewhere. Yes. And I don't know, but the other part of it is I want to root against Georgia. What Georgia's doing off the field right now, we have had outlaw programs in the past, whether it's Oklahoma or Miami, and it was kind of cool to like kind of be like above the law or around the law, but a lot of it was more to like, whatever. I mean, whatever. If you found a gun,
I think the coolness comes in
later.
Hindsight. It comes in hindsight.
Are we going to be at hindsight? Georgia was cool. I don't know. Are we going to be looking at 20 years from now?
Vehicle stuff?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, I think
so.
The sport. The perception of the sport is modernized. Yeah.
I want to root against Georgia. I think the North should be rooting for Bama on Saturday because I think Georgia is the enemy of any sane person right now. Because they are exhibiting behavior off the field that is consistent and abhorrent, and I think not called out enough. And that is, frankly, I think one of the primary stories of the sport right now is the best team is a danger to society on a regular basis. So I'm rooting for Bama. The North should root for Bama. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, because at least Bama's not that. And I don't want that
Bama's
to be
not
the
that
sport.
This week.
I don't want that to be the sport. I don't want Georgia to be the sport, man. I don't. Not like this.
That's fine, but there's also other ways, I think, to root against Georgia without worrying too much about the weekend's outcome. And I also think, like, be careful. If this is the devil you know. So for the larger mission that you and I know that you're on, I think it's deck chairs right now to try and pick a North wants X to win. I'll be honest with you. Here's what the North should want. You should want Georgia to win.
To hit the stadium. Oh, sorry.
You should want Georgia to win in the most reductive way possible that forces them to not make any adjustments or changes whatsoever. The same might be said of Texas, although I don't think that applies as much. You want Georgia to go into a situation where you see a Kentucky possibility against a roster that's better than Kentucky's.
Okay.
Honestly.
No, I'm in favor of that.
And give Chip a playoff situation. Give Chip a playoff situation with Ohio State against a Georgia team that's not willing to, because they've never been forced to, hold serve on offense and get into an answer, sort of back and forth answering on. Look, that's what happened when Urban beat Nick.
Yeah. Now, to Georgia's credit, when they beat Ohio State in the semifinal, Stetson Bennett and Todd Monken found a way to march down the field.
I know, and Georgia fans rail me for this. Georgia fans rail me for they're like, we've scored points in games. We did this. It's not the same. I'm sorry. It's just not the same. That game that you're speaking of is probably their best offensive effort relative to their competition ever. It is not their consistent identity, and it needs to be more balanced. I'll go to my grave saying it. I don't care if they send 7 defensive players to the NFL draft every year, the first day picks, but I firmly believe that is their Achilles heel. Like down south, we call them Stetson Bennett Kia, because there's like this proliferation of Kia dealerships across the Atlanta metro area. And it's like, you knew when that guy was running around on the field for Georgia winning a national title, you're like, this guy ain't going to the Hall of Fame in Canton. This guy's going to own 2 Kia dealerships in Dunwoody.
Oh, yeah. I said he was a hedge fund manager. Yeah.
It's giving some credit to hedge fund managers.
Hey, I'm not going to do my Stetson Bennett for you today. I've lost it. Okay.
Please don't.
Let's talk about a little bit of Northern coaching stuff before we go back to who killed college football. Sure. Curt Cignetti, as a guy who has won at every level, and let's emphasize this. Jordan's asking, is this college football podcast or Philosophy 401?
Both.
Godfrey's
why does it have to be? Wait, why does it have to be one or the other?
Because here's the thing that you understand better than probably anybody in the nation covering this, but I love as well, is like it's all the same. Because college football is a religion. It is a philosophy.
Yes.
It is a business. and it's a wonderful sport with awesome Saturdays. So we want to talk, but I would much rather talk about the philosophy of college football than the business and lawsuits of college football. The lawsuits of college football, which are happening, hold very little interest for me. Like how we got here, why we do this, who do we follow?
Now I'm reading.
That's where the good stuff is.
Doug, now you're getting now I'm reading the live comments. Shout out. We got some Michigan fans in here. I love it. Of course. They didn't do anything wrong. They were persecuted.
So he's, so I mean, Godfrey's gonna Godfrey. We understand that. And we've had enough Michigan discussions on this show. Right. So people know where we stand. Let's talk about Curt Cignetti, because you're also very good on coaches. When you have coaches, and Mike, we can put up the Curt Cignetti success. The guy wins everywhere. The guy has won everywhere. Indiana University, Pennsylvania, 53-17. Elon, 14-9, 2 playoffs. JMU,
Southern.
52-9. But
technically Southern.
He's a son of the North. He's born and raised in Pittsburgh. And this is the problem. All these Northern guys go south because they think that's where the good football is. He should have been doing this up here. Son of the North. He's back where he belongs.
All right. Okay.
JMU, he takes JMU from FCS to FBS, goes 52-9, 3 playoff appearances, also a bowl appearance. And now he's 4-0 at Indiana. He's 123-35 overall. Lance Leipold at Kansas is similar. Jim Tressel at Ohio State a generation ago was similar. When you have guys who win consistently at a smaller level, whatever it is, Division II, FCS, maybe Group of 5, whatever, and they get a chance at the big leagues and they win, is there an effect? Or is Curt Cignetti creating more opportunities in the coaching world for the next Curt Cignetti because he has Indiana 4-0?
He should. Now, let me say this. The dumbest people involved in the process are always the decision makers. That's the problem in our sport. Believe me, you and I, maybe more off air, could ID some situations that we recall where you're like, and this guy made the final call. Trends are way overvalued in the selection of head coaches at almost any level. So it's kind of painful that like, I should come here and say, I should answer your question by saying absolutely, because you know what this is? This is firm proof of concept. He can obviously translate whatever it is that he makes successful at school X over to school Y. The circumstances are different. Yes, I should be able to say that. I think it's going to take a little bit more time for that to happen. We can point to a couple other case studies here. Lance is one, but like Brian Kelly was one. Brian Kelly kind of came up the same way. So this isn't entirely, this isn't entirely unheard of. The thing that I would point out, and this is, I like watching Indiana. I've seen them play a couple times this year. I do think they're sort of arriving at what I would call their first data point against Maryland this weekend in terms of, all right, let's actually sort of test this. I said this on Split Zone Duo this week. Indiana's the losingest team in FBS history that's played X amount of games, right? It's like over 700 losses. That does something to a psyche. And that psyche in Bloomington has been beautiful to watch this year, because the first thing was, okay, well, we got Tom. We liked Tom. We were excited about Tom. And then he imploded on us. And I think Tom Allen, all things considered, is a pretty good coach. Curt shot past, please don't embarrass us, and went straight into, oh, wait, are we like a legitimate middle-class Big Ten team right now? So it's kind of amazing for Indiana to even say that. And I don't think it's too early. I really don't. But here's a big caveat. All throughout that cycle, when I talked to people, as soon as they fired Tom Allen, the word was, and I didn't believe the word at first, was Indiana wants to be seriously committed to NIL and football. What does that mean? That's what I asked. Indiana wants to be committed to NIL enough to build, sustain, and complement rosters. I was like, all right, we'll see it. I think it's true, because I don't think Cignetti would have come if it wasn't, because of the Indiana of the situation.
Yep.
Okay. So I think NIL is going to be like all of the conversations that I've had with agents in the last 6 months. I was talking to an agent who has a really high profile G5 client right now. And we were kind of just playing the game of, what if school X calls school X, Y, and Z? And the way we would have played this game, this is all just hypothetical, just sitting having lunch. And the way we would have played this game decades ago is, okay, what kind of facilities or resources or schedule?
Recruiting base.
What's the recruiting base? Like, what are they close to this city? What are the expectations? Nope. There's one thing that starts the conversation now. Are you going to be competitive in NIL? Because we don't have a cap and we don't really have any rules. We don't really know what competitive is. We know we need to see action. We need to see water churning with NIL fundraising. Cignetti was the recipient of that. Now, it's a little bit of like causation correlation. Did Cignetti come into Indiana and say, look, I am a damn good football coach. I've done this, this, and this. In order to be successful, you have to have this. And do you give him credit for that? I would. I think everything that this guy has done up until this point says that he can assess the situation, both football and non, and then say, here's the path to success. So, I mean, it's still early. They could lose. I probably won't lose this weekend, but they will lose eventually, and some of the shine will come off.
I think that your point is part of it is that Curt Cignetti taking the job at all.
Yes.
Shows a sense of purpose, serious. Yes. He's a serious person, yes. And it's a seriousness of purpose from Indiana that they even got him. But to your point, right? Yes. Urban Meyer would always tell his guys, you've got to go. So Tom Herman leaves Ohio State, takes the job at Houston because it's in Texas and you can recruit there. Chris Ash leaves, takes the job at Rutgers because there's actually good players in New Jersey. You should be able to recruit there. Urban Meyer always told his guys, you have to take a job where there's a recruiting base that you can rely upon and give yourself a chance. And NIL, if NIL is the new recruiting base, I think we may be able to tell, will you be able to tell from the hire itself how serious a program at least says it's going to be about NIL? Because it's like, oh man, this is clearly their sixth choice because nobody with a resume or with any potential would take this job because they aren't committed to it. Whereas Cignetti says, I win everywhere. The fact that he's at Indiana proves that Indiana's serious.
Terrifying that we agree this much, isn't it? So your analysis of what I just said is dead on, but two things. This also can be shown in two very different places. One, the hire of Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, because that was his first question. All right. So when they went around, that hiring search was really meant for CAA clients to get raises, because a lot of CAA clients got some good raises. Okay. A couple non-CAA clients, but mainly Sexton's, gang of usuals got a little boost at places like Florida State. And elsewhere. The MAC had to hire Pete Limbo, who's not a bad football coach by any stretch at Buffalo, right after Mo Lindquist went to become a co-DC down in Tuscaloosa. The MAC is running into this problem now where there is no NIL. So if I'm a young, promising coach and I want to go do the Urban Meyer thing at Bowling Green, should I do that at all? Or should I just stay and be an assistant or coordinator or whatever at a higher level? So Indiana looked successful the day they got a successful candidate to agree to be their head coach. We didn't really know what we were seeing at the time because we're in a period of so much change that it's kind of hard. Look, I'm going to be honest. We're all paid to act like experts or to portray ourselves as experts. Anyone is lying to you right now if they can predict these last three cycles. Because they can analyze these last three cycles or predict the next three, because there's so many variables that are changing in the sport. By the way, like your comment here from John talking about that worked out really well for Chris Ash. Go to Rutgers now. It would be a completely different situation. Completely different situation.
And it's not. It's that. Yeah, he couldn't get the support, but they also couldn't get the players to stay in Jersey. It's not. But the players are there.
Doug, you want to get mad at the South?
Build a program on.
If you want to get mad at the South, if Rutgers keeps winning, it still chaps asses down. I live in Nashville. I'm broadcasting from Nashville. God, it chaps their ass to talk about Schiano. It is so weird. Given the
he's in the right place.
Given the year that Tennessee's having and the season that they've had,
they're still mad.
God, they still talk about Schiano.
Let's do a tiny little bit on Iowa. How good when this job comes open? I know there are people. I have Iowa fans in my life that really like the special teams coach there. That like, hey, will you promote from within, that kind of thing? It's not going to be Brian, obviously, but
dear God,
how good is that job? Like that's, we're not trying to shove Kirk Ferentz out, but the guy's been there forever. And
I wouldn't mind
at some point, how good is that job? Do you think?
I wouldn't mind it. I think he's the false idol. I think you talk about like morally bankrupt. I mean, don't get me started.
You talk about morally bankrupt. Don't get me started. Anyway,
Iowa is one of these jobs that I don't think people realize is like beloved by coaches. It always has been. Like, even with everything that went on with the Texas A&M debacle this offseason, I still firmly believe, based on a lot of conversations I've had over 5 years, that Mark Stoops would walk to Iowa City right now.
Okay.
If you were a Hawkeye, if you worked on a Hawkeye staff, there is something so deeply appealing to the way that Ferentz was able to sort of create a dictatorship over those years.
Fiefdom, yeah.
Win within reason of expectation. Because that's the thing I used to get in these massive arguments with Iowa fans. Like, don't you want more? Like, you flirt at this one level, and occasionally you go to an Orange Bowl or you get the crap kicked out of you by Stanford in the Rose or whatever. Don't you want more? And they are so content. There's something so appealing about Iowa to coaches that if this job ever does come open, or they don't just like a pitchfork mob has to remove Kirk. The problem is there won't be a pitchfork mob because he's still wildly popular in Iowa. You will be shocked at the number of coaches who want to go to Iowa. I promise you. It is going to look higher than it should in the pecking order of jobs. It's shocking to me, but it's just part of they've bred a lot of great assistant coaches over the year. I think Brett Bielema would go in a heartbeat.
He's got a tattoo, man.
He does. I've seen it. And here's the best part of it. It's like the most got it at spring break at 2 a.m. tattoo. Like, I have tattoos. Like, I have good tattoos and bad tattoos from over the years. This was, I'm going to do this quickly. I'm going to do this very much under the influence. And the individual doing it probably is not the most credentialed or accomplished artist, if you will. Shout out to Brett. He showed it to me one day because I was waiting for an interview with him at Arkansas's office. He comes walking in. This is off season near the spring game. Barefoot into the complex. He comes into the complex barefoot, painfully sunburnt, and a sunburnt Brett Bielema is a particular sort of image because he'd been he'd been out on the lake on the boat all weekend. And the first thing he said to me was, "Give me 1 second. I'm more hungover than I thought."
4-0, taking it to Happy Valley this weekend.
I love that dude, man.
He's good for I'm glad he's back in the Big Ten. He's where he belongs.
It works. Yeah,
I like when coaches wind up where they belong. Yes. Okay. We could go 6 hours. We're not going to go 6 hours. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this new series, Who Killed College Football, and why a UNLV quarterback kind of giving up on the season in the middle of the year is exactly what you're talking about. All of that and more next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises with Stephen Godfrey, a split zone duo. All right, Godfrey. So explain fully what this series is, Who Killed College Football, how you and your co-host Ryan came up with the idea for it, and what are you truly investigating here? What are people going to be getting themselves into when they make this part of their lives?
So the first question I get from hardcore college football consumers is well, it's not dead. Duh, I just watched it last weekend. So the framing we used is what I referenced earlier, which is that Nick Saban went in front of a bunch of lawmakers and basically said, he kind of put a pin on what people were feeling different ways about different reasons in college football, which is essentially the change that's occurred in the sport. Mm-hmm. It's always been changing. It's never changed quite this rapidly. And I think the combination of the speed and the volume of change has a lot of fans, regardless of affiliation of team or conference or region, kind of looking at the ground beneath their feet and wondering, what's this thing going to be in 5, 10, 15 years? And then do I like this? Do I feel the same way about this? I think, hearing fans at places like Purdue and Virginia Tech, those are the two schools that I just remember. So this summer I set up a voicemail line. I just said, how you feeling about college football? Just call, leave me a message. And there was this overwhelming sentiment from fans at places like Iowa State or Purdue or Virginia Tech or, even a South Carolina, where it's just I don't know if college football loves us back anymore. I don't know if we're reflected in what's about to happen, let alone if you're some poor soul who's I work all week, I save up my money, and I want to go to 6 Central Michigan home games a year, and I want to care about the Chippewas. Where are you reflected in this sport? And obviously, this gets into a variety of subjects, okay? But when Saban went in front of those lawmakers in DC and in my opinion had the audacity to say that, well, the sport's dead. This is just not the sport I know, because some kids came up to him after they lost the Rose Bowl and said, I want money to stay. I'm being reductive here. I'm being quick, but this is how I feel.
Yeah.
It's dead. All right. I said, all right, Nick, you're the most powerful person here. Right? We build a mythos around you.
Yeah.
Let's take you at your word. It's dead. Who killed it? So then, just as sort of like a bar room exercise for the past year, I'd ask people, different walks of life, different political and philosophical persuasions, who killed college football? Because I keep encountering this feeling that isn't positive about the sport. Now, if you're a fan of Michigan or Georgia right now, yeah, you probably love college football, right? But the amount of people who have this unease is growing. And just from the interest we've received in the pre-production of the show, kind of feel like we're right. Also, if you look at the book market, there are 2 books out. There's one that just came out, The Price by Armin Katayan and John Talty. There's another book that I have a galley proof of on my desk here called The End of College Football. It comes out this December from 2 academics. Clearly, something is happening here. So what we decided to do was, rather than get into the punditry of it, let's investigate. So let's find the 6 likeliest suspects. We're going to create
suspects.
Yeah, we're going to create 6 suspects on who killed college football. All right. It's an anthology series. You can go to wkcfb.com. You can also search Who Killed College Football on Substack and support us. And then each anthology episode is just going to completely investigate the culpability, the whereabouts, the level of suspiciousness for each suspect. Okay, level of suspiciousness for a suspect. Not a good sentence, but we are going to go one at a time. The prologue is out right now. If you go check it out, you can. By the way, any major podcast feed, Spotify, Apple, all that stuff. Right? I use Overcast. The prologue is out today, and this week the first episode is up. And the first suspect number 1, television. Okay.
Oh, I knew it. It's freaking TV. I knew it was going to be them.
We are going to examine 6 suspects, and then at the end of the season, we'll give a verdict. Okay. We will also have bonus information.
Oh, you'll give a verdict? So you're going to tell us who you think did it?
Possibly. We're investigating right now. It's just like the cops do, right? Like, it's under investigation right now, Doug. Who knows? So there'll also be bonus interviews, early access for subscribers. We're going to do Q&A events. We're going to do some live events. We are going to take this past the anthology as it goes, as it builds, and talk to key individuals in the sport, both current and past. And I have put out interview requests to people that, well, I just can't wait for the rejection email, to be honest with you. But we are swinging hard. We are swinging aggressively.
So let me ask this, though. And this, even the fans with consternation, if we agree that college football is dead, then the question is, did it deserve to die or not? And so is it not a little bit, I feel like maybe this is like college football was Don Corleone, right? It was sort of a corrupt mob boss running things a certain way, my way or the highway, top down, dictating to everybody involved. And it's like, okay, should you take out the boss? It's like, you probably maybe should take out the boss. But I think maybe we took out the boss. And at the moment, Fredo's in charge. This is the bumbling son. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like, so now it's like, well, what would you rather have? The heavy-handed, my way or the highway, but at least there's kind of a way of doing business. And if you close your eyes, you can be happy about it, or the bumbling fool. So now we have to kill it again. Now we have to kill it again. We have to kill the kid again to get a better person in charge. But are there people disputing? If the question is who killed it, is there much dispute, you think, about that it needed to die? Like that we couldn't keep doing it that way forever, could we? Because the main thing that died is that players are now going to get paid. But you're going to say they were already getting paid with 50s in bags at McDonald's, so why didn't we keep it that way? That's what you're going to say.
No, God, no. That's okay. No, the market value of these kids was being destroyed. When you can't operate an open market, a free market, when everything's in the black market, then essentially value is suppressed, and you don't have a true representation.
Like, do you think it should have died though? If it's dead, should it have died?
I'm gonna cop out for now, and here's why. I know I'm gonna be back on this show. I want to present a variety of suspects, and my job here, because I don't want to say endured, but I've listened to a lot of opinions, and the variety will shock you as to what's wrong with the support. Because I'm looking at the comments here. There are some suspects listed. All right, some pretty obvious things that you can point to. But there's a variety of opinion amongst consumers in different parts of this country. And I don't think it's a political or regional thing per se, because I've heard it all in different pockets. Also, you'd be surprised at like the stereotypical red state sort of Southern conservatives' thoughts are pretty damn close to the overeducated Beltway insider or New York or sort of New England academic on if kids should be paid. They're shockingly similar. So this is what I say when I say, like, all I ever want to do in college football is try and figure out America. Economics, philosophy, religion, racism, class, whatever, because you can only talk ball so much. So yes, there will be some philosophy involved here. However, I think the variety of suspects was strong enough for us to embark on this journey. I think just as equal to what's happening right now is the amount of history that's been ignored. A lot of this stuff, look, man, there have been some neon signs, and you know this, over the years of like, hey guys, we are driving incredibly fast towards a cliff.
Yeah.
And the stubbornness of some of the most powerful people involved in different decades will shock you. Like a lot of what everyone's kind of standing around going, God, of course this was going to happen. Of course, a UNLV quarterback is going to walk away from an undefeated team right now because he's in an NIL dispute. But how did we get there? How did we get to this point? It isn't just what you think. It isn't just that, hey, they didn't pay the kids for a long time. No, it's much more nuanced than that, because if there was any rule, Doug, any legislation, any rule whatsoever governing a structure of player compensation, if what's being alleged on social media as we record this about the quarterback, about the coaches, about Barry Odom's staff, about UNLV, if any of that stuff had been regulated or maybe hashed out with a players union, or there was actually some sort of labor involvement here, specifically like if we had killed the term student athlete 30 years ago, like we get into that, we get into Walter Byers, we get into the concept, we get into the excuse that was used by everyone involved to either stand on a moral or fiscal leg and hide or profit or just push it down the road. It's not just a history podcast. It's very much present day, but we are going to actually suss this out in a more sober way than just like, look, I spent a long time in my career reporting on the wrongdoings of the NCAA. But I'm not going to come to you and tell you that this show or any sober assessment of college sports is 100% the fault of the NCAA. Because who does the NCAA represent?
All of us. No, yes. I don't know. Sorry.
We're the constituents. Yeah. That's us.
So is this though? So again, you're talking about this podcast launching, and as it launches, the UNLV quarterback decides I'm not playing anymore this year. And by the way, UNLV already took his bio down because I just tried to look it up. Matthew Sluka. It's off the site. So here's the thing. So, we're not going to have the most in-depth conversation about this here, but shorthand is UNLV's 3-0. A lot of their offenses have the quarterback run around and do things on his own. Like if you watch the Kansas game, it was like that guy kind of beat Kansas by himself. They're in the thick of the race for the G5 playoff spot. He says, and there's been a lot of reporting on this already. I was reading some stuff from Adam Rittenberg, who talked to his dad on ESPN.com, saying that like he was promised $100,000 by a UNLV assistant coach, and none of that has been paid. There's other things saying, I think the UNLV side of things is saying like he's asking for more money, and that's the issue. He said, I'm going to stop playing. I'm going to redshirt. And now there's factions forming of like, hey, if the kid's not getting paid, would you work for free? And then there's the quit on his teammates. The thing that's the quit on the teammates side, he's been there for 4 months. He was at Holy Cross for 4 years. So if we didn't have this different world, he never would have been there to begin with. It's not like he grew up with a Runnin' Rebels tattoo.
No, this reminds me.
He went from Worcester, Massachusetts to Las Vegas, Nevada because he loves the brotherhood of UNLV. Like it's the thing that's ending the relationship is what created the relationship to begin with. So how can you quit on your teammates? He's been there for a month. What is he quitting on? He doesn't even know these guys.
This reminds me so much of the Caleb Williams thing. And at the time, which is kind of funny because I think Lincoln has duffed so many press ops and so many chances to pivot and to sort of burnish his reputation out in LA. I think he's not doing a great job in that regard. But at the time, Oklahoma looked crazy when the Lincoln Riley Caleb Williams thing happened. And they were like, how could you do this? How could you do this and take Caleb? Bro, Caleb was from DC. Yeah. He went to Oklahoma, a place he had never visited or cared about before, because that head coach had created 2 Heisman winners who are also number 1 overall picks. And the third guy was a 2nd round pick and a Heisman runner-up. He went for pro dev. Like he did not go because he grew up dreaming of riding the Sooner Schooner. Like it's just not,
I love Brian Bosworth.
Yeah, like that's not how it goes, man. I would grain of salt just about everything that's coming out right now, because in any scenario, and you know this as a longtime reporter, where it's all gray area, it's going to be pure conjecture until I want to see some paper. I want to see some paper on what that deal was. And guess what?
It does.
They don't have to turn it over.
But it does matter to me, though, if like the parents are on the record. Of course, it's their side, but they're on the record saying like this is the specifics of what happened and what has not been delivered. So I will be very curious. But here's the main thing about it: is this a line in the sand? There's a lot of stuff that, like, frankly, I know stuff has to happen somewhere, but you know, the whole Dartmouth basketball team suing for union or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Is that really going to be? This is where it starts. This feels like in the moment, and we're 12 hours removed from it happening, not even 8 hours, 6 hours. Doesn't this feel like this could be the line in the sand? That this will get us to nobody wants this. We need contracts. We need collective bargaining. We need a players union, because people have to live up to their ends of the deal on both sides. And it's not good for teams. It's not good for players for things to be run through collectives where there are no rules. And this is a concrete example of when there are no rules and there is no real structure, what happens? It hurts everybody. Do you think this is a line in the sand, that change comes from this, or is this just a speed bump amidst the chaos?
If it happened at Ohio State or Georgia or Michigan or LSU, maybe. I think if there was a stoppage of play, which is what I thought naively when I was a younger reporter, that's one day you would have some sort of like organized strike or something, which isn't going to happen. If there was a stoppage of play, I would agree with you. I don't think UNLV holds caliber enough to affect the national picture. I don't think that you can gather sentiment on the player side, unfortunately. And the problem is this, Doug. Everything you're saying makes total sense. And every coach that you speak to is exhausted by this. Exhausted. It is destroying the offseason and I don't mean that in a way where like crocodile tears. Like it really is affecting the sport in a negative way. But you have your coaches, you have your personnel guys, you have everyone who's actually involved in the football part saying, do something, do something, do something, do something. And the moment you get to the executive level of the sport, athletic directors, school presidents, conference commissioners, and quietly network executives are all saying the same thing.
Dun, dun, dun.
We don't want them to be considered employees. Well, what the hell are they now?
Yeah.
As long as they are not budging off that. And the problem is in American labor, we've never set up a structure where you could have a union, collective bargaining, etc., without at least the debt, like the factory workers in the Upton Sinclair era did pay you. They're refusing to even call them labor. So we're still far away, in my opinion.
I have in my unwritten college football novel, the team walks off the field at halftime of the national championship game. So that's my boycott scenario. But the whole thing is that when you have people with a finite amount of time to pursue this thing, it is very hard to get any group of them to give up a year. Can you imagine if college football players went on strike for a year? But those guys they just went through with COVID. You're blowing a whole year. Maybe the NCAA would do that. Hey, guys, you all went on strike for a year, but you can have an extra year of eligibility. Wouldn't that be nice if everybody did that?
It'd be great if they did that now, because then you could have a quarterback in college for like his,
14 years.
ninth year or whatever.
Like I said, there's nothing quite like, we talked about it with Alan Bowman and Godfrey. There's nothing quite like
still playing
a 24-year-old quarterback in year 7 really come into his own. Doesn't it warm your heart?
Alan, I'm 43. Alan Bowen and I guarantee you have shot for the same minivan. I refuse to believe that guy doesn't have kids in daycare.
I hope maybe the big time programs look at this and say, this is no way to live. It happened to UNLV. Let's do something before it happens to us. Because if it did happen here, it's going to happen somewhere else.
It would happen
some other collectives can. Yeah.
It would happen in the Big Ten. It would take the Big Ten and the SEC to just say, hey guys, we're now instituting this rule. NCAA follow or be left. That's what it would take.
Yeah. And I hope, but maybe we can learn from this before before we have to learn from other examples of it. It's a mess. All right, Stephen Godfrey, Who Killed College Football? The first official episode will drop when?
It's live. The prologue is live right now.
The prologue. And how long are these episodes we're talking about? The
prologue's about no, the prologue is that's me. Yeah. That's me.
We just spent 14 minutes on the philosophy of
brevity.
Nick Saban as a steward. Yeah.
Brevity often describes my work. Brevity. The prologue's about a half hour. Each episode's about an hour. Then bonus content on top of that. And there's a very intentional structure to that, which is that I don't want to take up a ton of people's time. And every episode can be listened to independently without the other, so you don't feel like daunted or you have to catch up. So yeah, we want some accessibility to it. Everybody can find some entry points, especially as we get to some of the other suspects. We're going to draw in people probably from outside of college sports.
Okay. So you guys can go listen to that. Go and then you'll be back down the road here.
Back.
And you'll probably be back during the course of this thing running, potentially, right? Because how often are you dropping the episodes? One a week? Or what's the plan for dispersal?
No, the anthologies, we're kind of working in like a 10 to 17 day window with other content kind of interwoven. So these are entirely scripted. So it's like kind of making a TV show just with no video. So it takes a little bit longer. And also we're interviewing a lot of people. As someone on here might know, we're interviewing a lot of people.
Yes. This show is unscripted. So this is like a reality show where people just run around and eat bugs. And yours is like a prestige TV where people actually consider what they're saying.
Do I have to eat a bug next time I'm here?
Oh, I mean, I'll stab a bug with my sword and we'll see what happens. I'll send you a piece of it. All right. Thank you for joining us here today on Kings of the North. When we come back, we'll have it's old, but Bama's back in the news this week because Bama was off last week. We'll have my Alabama-Wisconsin tailgate report, and then Bill Landis will join us next on Kings of the North. All right, let's get a sense of what it's like to tailgate here at Wisconsin at Camp Randall, the former site of a Union Army training center during the Civil War that a bunch of Alabama fans are now taking their photo in front of. Why do you love the Wisconsin Badgers?
Well, I graduated from here. I've been going a long time. It's just a fun place to be, great atmosphere for football games. Just great, just great.
When did you graduate from Wisconsin?
1971.
1971. And what do you think it's like in Camp Randall? How would you describe it to somebody who's never been here before?
It's fun. It's just a great atmosphere. People have a good time. They pull for the Badgers, but it's just an overall great atmosphere. College football is great.
What do you think of all these Alabama fans coming up here? I'm a little worried they haven't been this far north before.
I think it's outstanding. It's great. I mean, college football is great. Having a big game like this makes a huge difference. It's better than playing like Western Michigan or South Dakota. It's great that Alabama fans can come. It's what college football is about.
What do you think of all these Alabama fans coming up here? Bama hasn't been this far north since 2011.
Well, I don't know if they can it's a little too warm for them, or it's a little too warm, so we can't say they can't handle the cold right now. But I think it's great that they're coming up here. I hope that they have the best time in Madison.
You guys are too nice. Shouldn't you be like telling Bama to cram it and stuff? Have a great time in Madison.
I wish we had the talent to tell them to cram it this year. That's the issue.
So the tailgating here in Madison, Camp Randall's in a neighborhood. So there are these parking lots and bars up and down the street where people week after week, year after year find their little spots, and there are a million of them, and sometimes the band will even walk into your tailgate. What's better, Northern football or Southern football?
Northern, absolutely, 100%.
Why? Why is Northern football better?
They can't handle the tough cold. They get hit, they go on the IR, they go on the bench. We don't do that. We get hit in the cold, we battle back, and we win the game.
Yeah.
Bama can't do that.
No, Bama can't. This show is called Kings of the North because we celebrate Northern college football because we're sick of the South.
Yes.
and all the SEC bias out in the world, right?
Yeah, SEC is soft.
Yeah.
Here now, SEC is soft.
Why do you love Badger football?
I love Badger football because we're blue-collar men who can beat it at the line and win it at the 10-yard, 3 yards in the cloud of dust. We'll win the game. 3 yards in the cloud of dust.
So that'll do it for our Kings of the North tailgate report. Had plans to maybe poke fun at Alabama fans a little bit more than we did, but maybe a lesson learned here. Maybe we're more alike than we realize.
And more so than I love Wisconsin football, I hate Bama! The tie!
Whoa.
Hey, can I be in your vlog?
Yes. Roll Tide! Or not. I don't know. Maybe not. But anyway, games like this, Bama versus Wisconsin and the non-conference, North versus South, this is all good for college football. For Kings of the North, with another tailgate report, I'm Doug Lesmerises. We are in a stadium on the site of a Civil War training camp in front of a monument right here. You know, we know how that went last time around.
That's true. I mean, record shows, right?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Scoreboard on that one. All right, good luck to the Badgers today.
Go Badgers!
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the tailgate report, Landis, from Wisconsin 2 weeks ago.
I like that the guy very, very kindly asked you, like, hey, can I be in your vlog? And then drop the Roll Tide on you. I respect that.
I did talk to I did 6 other interviews where I screwed up the audio. So I talked to some very lovely, when I was saying like, hey, maybe the lesson is we're all more alike than we realize. I talked to some very lovely Alabama fans. I actually talked to 2 awesome Alabama fans who lived in Philly and Chicago. I sort of was like, I want to be friends with you guys, but what are you doing? And they were like, well, my grandma liked Alabama. And when someone says my grandma liked Alabama, I don't know what to say in response to that. I can't say, well, your grandma can cram it. Can I?
Grandma. Yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
And I had plans for a whole Cram It Bama tailgate, and I was going to pass out Cram It Bama t-shirts beforehand. And then once Wisconsin was just handing the game over, I was like, I'm kind of glad I didn't do that. This was maybe not the opportunity to really stake a claim for the North this early in the show. Like, I'm glad those games happened, but it's like, hey, let's send the greatest college football program of the last 2 decades north to play a team that is completely lost and trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah, not the time. I think I'm trying. We'll have maybe we can tell them to cram it when Texas comes to Columbus next year.
Yeah, there'll be more cram it opportunities. This was not it. But I will say, just again, from walking around there were, and this was 2 weeks ago by now, but there were a lot of Alabama fans, and like people were enjoying it. The Alabama fans were happy to be somewhere new. And the Wisconsin fans thought it was cool to have somebody new there. And so this is why these games have to be on campuses. And it was a good example of what we should be doing here in the sport. And so Bama, of course, can still cram it, but other than the game being non-competitive, it was like a lovely Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, it seemed cool. I mean, that's the beauty of these on-campus games, right? You get these fan bases together when they're not used to it. Like even the guy that said, we hope we have a good time in Madison. Like I actually, on some level, do appreciate that. I think you can be a little meaner, right? You can be a little meaner, but yeah, I do like kind of sharing your college football experience with somebody who's coming from a different college football experience.
This is how we do it. It's maybe different than you, but we want to show you because we're proud of how we do it. And I will say the college guy, like I was talking to that group of college kids, they had on Wisconsin spelled out on their chests. And so I was like, hey, you guys get together and, so I can take a picture of the on Wisconsin, but then I didn't want to show it on the show because it was backwards. And it was like, whatever, like Consiwe no or whatever. And it was like, okay, you're probably not ready for this, but they were shouting at Alabama fans when they were booing Alabama fans as they walked past, and the Bama fans were waving. So there was a little bit of give and take. It wasn't just like friendly Wisconsinites embracing Alabama. So, but it's fair. Do you think it's fair? It's fair to scoreboard the Civil War, right? Scoreboard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad that that's where her mind went. Yeah. Cause that's whatever happened on that field that day, the other win was better.
I'm not 1,000% sure that I knew exactly the deal with Camp Randall and the history and why that stadium is called Camp Randall, but
I just thought there was like an old football coach named Camp Randall because guys were named Camp back then.
Yeah, they have a lot of Civil War stuff around. This is so. I was gonna research that, like, how often has a Southern team like come to Camp Randall even to be like, welcome to our Civil War Union training facility. Let's play a football game. But isn't that lovely? We're all together, right?
Great. I got locked inside Camp Randall one time. That was a good thing.
Did you have to climb out? What'd you do?
Someone called the cops for me to get me out of there, or campus security maybe. Yeah, I was there for a basketball game, and I like to try to break into college football stadiums. And I got into Camp Randall, but then the gate that I went into when I came back, it was locked. So then I was stuck in there, and I was like, well, guess I got to call security to get me out of here.
You weren't even there for a game. You were in there when you shouldn't have been, and then had to say, "Let me out." Did they throw you in the pokey?
No, they were cool. I like played it. I played it dumb. I was like, oh, I was just walking around and like didn't realize where I ended up. And then when I went back, I was locked out. So they're like,
okay, you got lucky on that one. You're lucky. Wisconsinites are nice. All right, so we want to run through a little bit. This is sort of like, it's not the debut of it, but as we gather Northern fans here on Kings of the North, and again, a lot of them are Big Ten fans. We are now in at least a 5-window world for teams for fans who care about the teams that we care about here, because we now have this regular Friday night Fox game that is just going to be a part of your life. And now we're going noon, 3:37, 10:30, or 11. So it's a 4-window Saturday plus Friday. It's a 5-window world, Landis. And as much as, like, I think people in the past, again, for our people, Oregon fans and Washington fans and Utah fans who are participating in Kings of the North, and we're so glad that they're here. This was their normal world. Like, you were used to this. But for everybody in the Midwest, there are going to be what were previously Pac-12 after dark games that are now Big Ten after dark games. And there's one of them this week with Oregon UCLA, which is 2 West Coast teams. But if you're a fan of Maryland or Rutgers or Michigan State, it's like, hey, we're playing those guys later, or it matters for the conference race. You now care about that. That's a lot of windows. Is it too many windows, or is it like, yes, let my weekend be 5 very clear 3-hour blocks of watching football game after football game?
I think I'm kind of there with the second part. I don't know that it's too many windows. I guess I would hear the Friday night thing, because I'm also a proponent of maybe leaving Friday night for high school football when you can. But I don't hate the idea of, like, go to your high school football game, you come home, and like the game that's on Friday night is like at halftime, you get to watch second half kind of thing. Like, I think maybe those can coexist. I actually really like the idea of Big Ten after dark on a Saturday night. Like, I am the kind of person who kind of, and I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening are too, like that likes to kind of unwind at the end of a night with like that one game that's still on TV. And like sometimes it's like a random Mountain West game, which can be fine. But the idea of it being, and this week's not the best example, but at times like a potentially like high stakes kind of Big Ten game, or at least a competitive Big Ten game, I think that could be pretty cool. So I now like that window kind of belongs to the North a little bit. Like, because it'll almost always, I guess, be a Big Ten team in there, right? Like, I don't know who else it might be. So I like, it's cool. It's a new addition to a Saturday that I'm actually pretty excited about.
So let's run through 3 games that really apply to this. It's not like we didn't have it before. Like, we've had Indiana, UCLA, we had USC, Michigan, but now it's really full throated, right? Like, we're here. We're back. We're in conference play for everybody, and this is the new Big Ten. It does start Friday night with Washington at Rutgers. Again, I think in practice, there's a lot of reasons to be against playing a college football game on a Friday night, because it should be for high school football. But then you tell me we're given like an 8 o'clock window to Washington Rutgers, where it gets the slot, it gets the focus. It's not against anybody else. And I'm kind of like, I kind of want to watch Rutgers and Washington on Friday, and I'm going to go to my high school football game, and then I'm going to come home and watch the second half of Washington Rutgers, or record it and catch up. And I'm excited for this game, and I like that it's on Friday night.
I think there's football reasons to be excited about it, right? But I too, I am very much in favor of programs like this, and maybe that sounds weird lumping Washington into that, given Washington just played in the national championship. But like if this game was on a Saturday, it would just get lost in the wash. Like not many people, I think, would be tuned in. Like the fan bases for these two teams would be watching it, but I think a Friday night is a very cool spotlight for a program like Rutgers under Greg Schiano that's like really trying to build something for the long haul there, and then a program like Washington that is trying to show people that it wasn't just a flash in a pan last year. Like I'm glad that these two programs are getting this window to themselves to kind of showcase who they are and who they want to be.
Dan Wetzel and I talked about a little bit of this on Tuesday when we were talking about realignment. When there was this brief moment where it felt like South Florida was dancing with the Pac-12, and it was like, could we really be in a world where South Florida is in the Pac-12 and Cal is in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and it's so crazy? I think Washington Rutgers, even though it's literally coast to coast, it's still defensible, partly because of us. Because we're saying it's not about East-West, it's about North-South. So I can make an argument that Rutgers playing Washington makes sense. Do you think people who watch this on Friday night will believe that argument, or is a lot of the talk during this game where the broadcasters are going to be constantly like, I can't believe these campuses are 3,100 miles apart? Is that all we're going to hear about?
I don't know that it's all we'll hear about, because there was a similar dynamic at play last Friday night when Syracuse was hosting Stanford, right? And I don't know that we heard a ton of that. Like, it was certainly addressed within the broadcast, but I don't think it was the only thing that the broadcast talked about. The hope, right, is that the football is good enough to like kind of rise above that, right? If this game is a stinker, then like hopefully it's not, but if it's a stinker, then maybe we'll get more of that than we care to tolerate. But no, I don't think this is that weird. I guess I don't know. It is kind of strange. Specific to Piscataway is a little bit of a hard thing to wrap your mind around. Although these teams have played, didn't Rutgers Washington have a non-conference series like very recently? I feel like Washington might have played at Rutgers like 2 or 3 years ago, as a non-conference game, or maybe Washington. Like I remember like a Thursday night or a Friday night game like at Rutgers where Washington played, where I had very similar thoughts about it being a little bit of a showcase for Rutgers.
16 and 17.
Yeah,
16 and 17. 16 at Washington, 17 at Rutgers. Look at you.
Yeah. So I'm all up to date on this historic rivalry between these two teams.
Look at you, Huskies and Scarlet Knights. So looking forward to this one on Friday. Then Saturday afternoon, and again, this is all about. We just want to we're doubling back on welcoming the West to the North. Wisconsin at USC. USC's 4 Big Ten home games are, I think, like really interesting this year. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin this weekend, 3:30 on CBS. October 12th, Penn State, which is when you start going through Penn State's schedule and think about Penn State as a playoff team, you point to the Ohio State game first. I think you point to the trip to USC second. Mm-hmm. Then they have Rutgers on October 25th. That's at USC, and Nebraska at USC on November 16th. Those are 4 fairly competent or better Big Ten teams, and particularly with Penn State, but with all of them, like the road team has a chance. It could matter for when we're talking about like potential edge of playoff discussion. USC is really going to matter in this mix. And I'm super interested to see off and off week after the Alabama loss with a new starting quarterback. Can Wisconsin go to USC and compete, or is this a chance for USC to get healthy after the Michigan loss and blow Wisconsin away?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm super confident in the idea of Wisconsin kind of getting it back together, just because I saw what this looked like last year when they lost their quarterback and Braden Locke had to play, and it was like they were just holding on for dear life, trying to scrape together some points enough to not get embarrassed. I think so. This feels like not a potentially great spot for that dynamic to kind of come back into play. But I'm interested in USC here. Like I know they're not of the North, but I'm interested in USC. I think doing what you just said, sort of like bouncing back from that loss at Michigan and kind of reestablishing itself, or reminding us that it will be a factor in the Big Ten race, even if it's not going to be a team that wins the Big Ten race, but a team that can spring some results one way or the other that's going to impact who goes to Indianapolis. And I think USC kind of like really feels like that pivot team to me with who they have to play and who we think might end up going to Indianapolis. So I'm curious to see USC kind of bounce back up off the mat more than I am Wisconsin because of that.
And then the last one is UCLA and Oregon. This is 11 p.m. on Fox. And again, if you're a Big Ten fan and if you're a fan of Northern college football, this is like, hey, don't you want to stay up and get eyeballs on Oregon off their bye? So you have to stay up till 11 p.m. for a reason, because you want to see how Oregon looks. And then Oregon's playing Michigan State and Ohio State the next 2 weeks. And by the way, when we're talking about Northern teams with a chance to win the national title, Oregon is very high on that list. I am really curious to see how Oregon's going to look, even though they should blow the doors off UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, it should look like that, right? That's what you expect it to look like. You want to see Oregon sustain what really felt like real momentum coming out of the game against Oregon State, right? Like that just sort of looked like Oregon, looked like the team that a lot of us thought was a legitimate national title contender. So it was good to see Oregon kind of regain that form, but now, got to go do it on the road against a power conference opponent like USC or UCLA, excuse me, is not very good. So it's not like a measuring stick game per se. It's a measuring stick for Oregon, like against itself, I guess, right? Like it has to go out there and show us that it is a team we sort of thought it was coming into the season. So I'm excited to see that too.
And just another absolute failure by the Big Ten, that it's like, Oregon's Big Ten debut. What is it? At UCLA.
Pac-12 game. Yeah.
A Pac-12 game, and UCLA's already had a Big Ten game, so it's not even their first game. Like it's insane. It's insane. I really think what's the right venue? I think we need to dig in on the Big Ten failing at this. The Big Ten's failure in the perception game, and what the outcome. Does it actually affect Big Ten and Northern football on the field? I think there's something there, because it just feels like they're failing again and again. And just hoping like, Oregon's going to play well. Dylan Gabriel's a story. We don't need to do anything. Tess Johnson's a story. It's fine. And I think they need help. I also
both conferences did that, right? Like the SEC did the same. Like the SEC is giving us Texas, Bama, and Texas, Georgia, right? But it's not like they're giving it to us in September. Yeah. So like I think they could have done the same thing and avoided it.
But at least, Oklahoma, they had Oklahoma, Tennessee last week, right? That was like a welcome to the SEC moment. Yeah. And I guess USC Michigan last week was a welcome to the Big Ten moment for USC. That was a big game. I don't know. It could be better. So Godfrey's thing is who killed college football. You were listening to the end of that conversation, right?
I was. Yeah.
I think our narrative podcast is who can cram it.
Yeah. We come up with a list of suspects who can cram it the hardest.
Yeah. And then we run through
every 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think this audience, I think this audience actually might watch that and listen to that. Who can cram it?
Who can cram it?
And if
it's a very narrowly focused narrative podcast.
But if it was like 55% real journalism and investigative and 45% nonsense, and it was just like, and then we like, but sir, is it not true that you can cram it? Like, like you do it with a straight face, but we're like asking, we're like going to the halls of Congress and asking, should you cram it or not? I think we have a chance there.
Do you start with Feinbaum or do you end with Feinbaum?
Oh, yeah. And it might end with Feinbaum. And is it an ambush interview of Feinbaum, like running up to him in the parking lot? Excuse me, Paul. Excuse me, Paul. Yes, Paul, can you cram it? Like, is it that? Or is it like a very serious, like, Mr. Feinbaum, is it not true, given your history of unjustified criticism of Northern college football and your previous role as a Southern antagonist who was bought and paid for and became a Southern apologist, would you not agree that you can cram it? Like, which is better, run up in the parking lot or a 60-minute style interview?
Ooh, I like the guerrilla style. I like
guerrilla
style.
The
ambush. Yeah.
And maybe I because I.
Although, it not true that you can cram it is a great turn of phrase. So I wouldn't mind seeing the very serious version of that either.
That if we want to be more accepted in the journalism world, that might be the podcast name. Is it not true that you can cram it? So I'll go undercover. I just love the dogs, Paul. Wait. Right? Southern guy. And then, wait, Paul, it's a Northern king. Is it not true that you can cram it? Because now we're like in a little bit of a version of Jackass too, right? If I have a sword with me, now we're like, what show is that?
My name is Doug Lesmerises. Welcome to Is It Not True that you can cram it?
All right.
And then you just go flying down a hill in a shopping cart right in the Paul Feinbaum.
That's the best. That's the best version yet. All right, let's do a little bit of what you're watching, what you eating, what you thinking while we're in a silly mood. What have you been watching, Landis?
I went to the movies last Friday for the first time in a while. I saw the Beetlejuice movie.
Oh,
Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Had you seen the original Beetlejuice movie?
Yes, which is like that was like a major part of my childhood. Like we watched that movie all the time. Yeah, I think it came out in the 80s, so like it came out. It might have even came out before I was born, but we watched it a lot when I was a kid. Like repetitively. So it holds a place for me in my childhood memory. So I wanted to see this one just to kind of like scratch that itch, but it was good. It was a pretty good movie. Like I was worried that it was going to be basically like a shot for shot remake of the original with what's her name from the Wednesday show?
Oh yeah.
What's that girl's name?
I don't know. She's younger than 40. So
Jenna Ortega.
Yeah.
Jenna Ortega. Jenna Ortega just doing everything that Winona Ryder did in the first one, but that's not what it was. It was actually like a separate, like new, like kind of fresh story. My only complaint is that like Michael Keaton like wasn't in a ton. Like it's like an hour and 45-minute movie, and I feel like he might have had, I don't know, 25 minutes of screen time. It was kind of strange.
He's very famous.
Yeah, but it was funny.
I've never seen either movie, but I did see the musical. That was very entertaining.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. All right, so I saw the movie The Substance, which is just the wildest thing I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. I don't want to give anything away. It is wild. And it is a lot of, I asked my wife if she wanted to go with me, and she was like, no. And then I was like, you would have walked out of it 6 different times if you had gone. I enjoyed it as a cinematic experience. I don't even know what else to say about it. It's one of those things where I kind of want to talk about it with people who have seen it, but I don't want to talk about it to people who haven't seen it because it's hard to talk about if you haven't seen it. So, but it's about
a horror movie.
It's not really a horror movie. I wouldn't call it a horror movie, but it's because I don't like horror movies. So it's not like people like jumping out and scaring you with an axe, but it's like Demi Moore is an aging actress, and she like decides that she can take this kind of substance to make her young again, and then like crazy stuff happens. So anyway, just wild. It's like I feel like we could do a podcast for people like, if you've watched The Substance, come and we'll have a podcast about it. But the thing I've really been watching is this show Kevin Can F Himself, which I think was on AMC a couple years ago, and now it's on Netflix. And it's just, I feel bad about this because I was interested when it was on AMC. I was like, oh, I should watch this. This feels like the kind of show that I would like. But then it was too hard to figure out when it was on and which channel is AMC, and I never watched it. And now that it's over and canceled and it dropped in my Netflix fee, I was like, yes. And now I'm addicted to it, and it's dead. And so it's like, why am I so stupid? I can't go watch a show where it is to help keep it alive. I only watch it after it's dead, and Netflix buys its rotting carcass and puts it in my algorithm. I'm what's wrong with TV consumption, but as much as streaming drives me nuts, it also makes it so easy. It is very difficult for me anymore to like go find something that is on a channel, and I feel terrible about it.
Why? Linear TV had a good run. They don't need your money or your attention anymore.
But then linear TV can like never have a successful show again, because the only way that a linear TV gets watched is after it's dead and Netflix buys it. I don't know.
Yeah, but this linear TV's for college football and the news and The Price is Right. I don't know what else you need.
This show is so good though. It's the whole thing. The conceit is excellent, and the execution is pretty darn good. But it's like half Breaking Bad, half King of Queens.
Oh,
and it's the same show. And
That's
it's the same
pitch.
show.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing of the show. That half the show, it's shot just like King of Queens or Everybody Loves Raymond or any kind of show like that with a dumb husband. And it's super bright and lit and cartoonish. And then the other half of the show is dark and dangerous and real and like high stakes. And so it's like the character like goes into the room and there's like crazy comedy, and then they go through a door and they're in the dark stage. And it's like really well done. And I wish I hadn't killed it before. So my bad. But I'm just going to do my what you're thinking real quick, because the thing I'm thinking is the cartoonish, clownish buffoon of a husband who is the main part of the comedy show was wearing an outfit straight off the Kohl's rack that was like cargo shorts and a button-down plaid shirt that I absolutely have worn or would wear. And I was like, oh, that's what the world thinks I am. I dress like a cartoonish, clownish buffoon. And I'm not sure what to think of that.
There's nothing wrong with dressing like you get paid in Kohl's cash.
There's not, right? Just because some Hollywood elites want to make me feel bad about that doesn't mean I should change my wardrobe, right?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've been thinking about a lot.
You should wear what you like and what you find comfortable, and don't worry about anything else.
Okay. Because that was like, here's a boob, here's a moron who looks just like Doug. I've been grappling with that for a while. Okay. Back to well, what are you thinking? We'll do thinking now. What you thinking?
I've been thinking for like 2 days about this news story that I read the other day, and I'll just read you the news story and just like leave it at that. I'll let it blow your mind too. So I get this email every day called the 1440. It's just a news digest. It's like news of the world stuff. I just like to read it so I'm not a total idiot when it comes to what's happening in the world. But sometimes they'll sprinkle like weird like oddball stories in there. Okay. So this story, this as part of the email was titled just octopus hunting parties. And then this is just sort of the summary of the story itself. It's 2 paragraphs. Bear with me. I'm going to read it. A team of German researchers diving in the Red Sea off the coast of Israel tracked 13 group cross-species hunts. In each case, a blue octopus, normally found hunting alone, led a pack of between 2 and 10 fish to descend on mollusks and other small fish. The goatfish served as explorers, scouting possible targets that the octopus moved to approve or reject. Meal sharing was not observed, and each animal ate what it could scrounge from the hunt. But this was the best part. I thought was hilarious. The octopus was also seen punching black-tip groupers, attempting to freeload and fish within the group, and other fish who seemed to be slacking in their roles. As a next step, researchers are interested in investigating whether octopuses can remember and exclude individual fish for repeated misbehavior. And I just like the idea of octopus swimming around in the Red Sea, bullying fish into finding food for it, because I had no idea that dynamic existed in the wild.
So when you said octopus hunting party, I didn't know if it was going to be the octopi are the hunters or the hunted. But I much prefer the story where the octopi are the hunters. It's not like humans putting a hunting party together to go kill octopi. Because are we not discovering, has this not been a whole thing, that octopi are geniuses?
I guess, yeah. They're super smart, right? Yeah.
And now we know they're also mob bosses. Hey, Groupa, you got a problem? You going to get me a mollusk or not, Groupa? And then
there is apparently video of the octopus punching fish in the face to get them to do their job right.
Really? Yeah. I think there have been a lot of things like Planet of the Apes, right? It's like, hey, the apes are going to take over the world. I think we're edging towards Planet of the Octopi. Like octopi are smart. But I would rather have octopi take over the world than robots. But I'm on the lookout for them now. Because they have smart brains and they have legs. Like, what else do they need? And they have
if they could survive outside of the water, I think it'd be a real problem.
Don't you think they can figure that out at some point, though?
Maybe they have, and we don't know it yet. Yeah.
They'll just bully some other fish and like squirting water on them enough. Like, just keep me moist.
You just have a guy following them around. Yeah, it's my water guy.
I'm not moist enough. Wow. Okay. No, I'm good. That's a good story. I think maybe you should just share your 1440 story of the week I think.
Well, there's not always a good one in there. Yeah, usually
there's always that one that interesting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Meanwhile, there's still a war. Oh, great. Good thing about that. So eating, I don't think have I talked about acai bowls on here? Like everybody loves acai bowls, right? You love an acai bowl?
Yeah, I like an acai bowl. Yeah.
So I like the acai bowl phenomenon. Like my mom eats acai bowls now. Like everybody loves an acai bowl, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really like acai, that flavor.
Oh.
But now I have an acai bowl place that has other flavors, and they have coconut and vanilla as a base instead of the acai flavor, and a half coconut, half vanilla base acai bowl with granola and bananas and blueberries and peanut butter on it. Oh my God. But is that healthy?
I think probably mostly, right? Like there's sugar in it, like natural
It's a
sugars,
lot of sugar. So I got to go for a walk after I eat it. It's a lot of sugar. But if it's ice cream, I'd rather have ice cream. But if it's healthy, it's fruit.
Not processed sugar, right? It's not processed suger. That's a distinction. I don't think it's like, eat all the naturally occurring sugar that you want and you'll be fine. But I think it's not. I think the fact that it's not processed sugar helps you.
Because sometimes I can't tell if the world is trying to get me to eat healthy food and just making it taste a little bit better, or if they're tricking me into thinking that dessert is healthy food. Because I'm a sucker and I'm susceptible to tricks like that. So I get
eat it as a dessert.
Bowl. No, I eat it as a lunch, like once a week as a lunch.
Yeah, I like it as a breakfast when I have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But have you ever had it with not acai flavor as the base?
No, because I like that flavor, and I also don't like coconut. I don't like coconut.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, but vanilla is a good base for that. But I was just like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like it's like an acai bowl, except it's not acai. So it's wonderful. And I probably should ask someone, no offense to you, with slightly more knowledge about nutrition and diet, just because like you and I know nothing. Right?
That's fair. Yep.
Maybe a doctor. Maybe a doctor or a nutritionist.
Yeah.
And before I eat
or
6
an octopus.
acai bowls a week.
Ask an octopus.
Yeah. Steve Octopus, nutrition doctor / fish bully. What are you watching this week? Oh, I'm watching Steve Octopus, nutrition doctor, fish bully. That would be a great show. What are you eating?
I recently experienced the honey pimento chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A, and I think it's the best fast food sandwich I've ever had.
So I'm sure I wouldn't like it, but it looks really good, and the commercials are very persuasive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, were you persuaded by the look and the advertising, and then it delivered?
Yeah, very much so. Because I have never had pimento cheese. It's something that frankly like kind of seemed off-putting to me. And I know it's like a huge thing with Masters, like pimento cheese sandwiches, right? But it's like a combination of like cheese and like mayonnaise and these little, I don't know, are pimentos peppers, I guess that's what they are. Okay. So like to me, it's like that sounds kind of gross. I don't really want that. But then like the commercials, like, where do you have it with some honey on a piece of fried chicken and some pickled jalapenos? And I was like, all right, I guess I'll try it. And it blew my mind.
Okay.
It was really good. It is the kind of sandwich that I think you have to eat like almost immediately. I don't know that if you like got it and had even a moderately decent drive home, that it would be good once you get back to your house, because it seems to get a little soggy and lose its structure.
Yeah.
But if you can have it on the spot, I would highly recommend it. It's got tremendous flavor. You get good heat actually from the jalapeno. It's like everything now is like sweet heat, right? Like it's like very common like food trend, I think. So, but this does a pretty good job of nailing that, I think.
Okay. I have like a takeout food thing that I've been saving for What You Eatin' that I want us to have a good discussion about at some point. So that's good advice though. Because I definitely agree. There are certain things that you get that are 50 to 80% better in the restaurant if you eat it there than rather trying to take it home, even if you only live 10 minutes away.
Yeah. And I think this is in that category for sure.
High on the list. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for What You're Watching, What You Eating, What You Thinking. That'll do it for this version of Kings of the North. Gets a little wild, right? I mean, it's like we said, like we want to be all over the place with the discussions we have here, but Godfrey is basically a philosophy class. And so maybe it's your thing. It is my thing. I really like that a lot, and like what college football means to all of us. So I'm really curious what Who Killed College Football is going to be like. And so we're excited to partake of that. We certainly would encourage you guys to do that. And then we'll have Godfrey back on and talk about it a little bit more over the course of this. And I think they did ask me if I wanted to be interviewed for it. So hopefully I'll be on it at some point if I say something smart, although it feels, Landis,
are you
like
a suspect? Are you?
Oh, for sure. No, I could. Like, mistakenly. I would be the bumbling idiot who accidentally killed. I loved it and I killed it. I tried to make it North versus South. And I talked about the Civil War too much and I killed it. I killed my beautiful sport. So that would be me. It would be manslaughter. I would never murder college football, but I would involuntary manslaughter college football in pursuit of trying to help it. Whoops.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Bill, don't tell anybody. I just killed the sport we love. Sorry. I thought I was really being smart about it, and I wasn't. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll look forward to our Thursday show, which will be here tomorrow at noon, where we will preview all the big games in the North and big game preview on Penn State, Illinois, right? Penn State, Illinois.
That's the one.
That's the big game. That's the one. So we'll dive into that and make picks for all of them. For now, thanks to all you guys. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, tell a friend, drop a review on Apple Podcasts, put a comment in here. We really appreciate everybody who's part of the show. We appreciate our producer, Mike Yurstowski, for doing all the work to make us look good and sound good. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.